Title: Essential Camera Settings for Fine Art Figure Photography.
Modul: Camera Fundamentals.
By now, we have explored the individual elements of camera operation: aperture, shutter speed, ISO, exposure, and file formats. The next step is learning how to combine these settings into a practical workflow. Great photographers do not think about each setting separately during a photo session. Instead, they develop a system that allows them to focus on creativity while maintaining technical control. Before every session, take a few moments to prepare your camera. These small steps can prevent mistakes and allow you to concentrate on your subject rather than your equipment. The first setting to consider is your shooting mode. While automatic modes can produce acceptable results, many fine art photographers prefer either aperture priority or full manual mode. Aperture priority allows you to choose the depth of field, while the camera automatically adjusts the shutter speed. This mode works well when lighting conditions are changing, such as during outdoor sessions. Manual mode gives you complete control over aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. It requires more practice, but it also provides the greatest consistency, especially when working in a studio with controlled lighting. Next, set your image quality to RAW whenever possible. RAW files preserve the greatest amount of information, giving you maximum flexibility during post-processing. If your workflow requires immediate sharing, you may choose to record both RAW and JPEG files simultaneously. White balance is another important consideration. Although RAW files allow white balance adjustments later, selecting an appropriate setting during the shoot helps produce more accurate previews on your camera's screen. For natural daylight, use the daylight preset or a custom white balance if precise color accuracy is important. In studio environments, setting a custom white balance using a gray card can ensure consistent skin tones throughout the session. Focus mode also deserves careful attention. For posed figure photography, single autofocus, often called AFS or one-shot AF depending on your camera brand, is usually the most reliable choice. Once focus is locked, you can fine-tune your composition without worrying about the camera constantly refocusing. Focus point selection is equally important. Rather than allowing the camera to choose focus automatically, select a single focus point whenever possible. This gives you precise control over where the viewer's attention will naturally fall within the image. Metering mode determines how the camera measures light. Evaluative or matrix metering works well for many situations, but when lighting becomes more dramatic, spot metering can provide greater precision by measuring exposure from a specific area of the frame. Another valuable habit is to review your histogram rather than relying only on the camera's LCD screen. Bright sunlight or dark surroundings can make the screen appear misleading. The histogram provides a more accurate representation of exposure and helps prevent lost highlights or blocked shadows. Keep your ISO as low as practical while maintaining the shutter speed and aperture required for your creative vision. Lower ISO settings generally provide cleaner images with greater dynamic range and smoother tonal transitions. Image stabilization, if available on your camera or lens, can be helpful when shooting handheld at slower shutter speeds. However, when using a sturdy tripod, many photographers choose to turn stabilization off to avoid unnecessary corrections by the system. For studio photography, using a remote shutter release or your camera's self-timer can reduce vibrations during exposure, especially when working with slower shutter speeds. As you gain experience, you will discover that preparing your camera becomes second nature. Instead of thinking about dozens of technical settings, you begin to work intuitively. Your attention shifts from the camera itself to the interaction between light, composition, and your subject. One of the greatest mistakes photographers make is constantly changing settings without understanding why. Every adjustment should have a purpose. Before changing a setting, ask yourself a simple question. What am I trying to achieve? If you know the answer, the correct camera setting often becomes obvious. Remember that cameras do not create meaningful photographs. They simply record the choices made by the photographer. Technical knowledge provides the foundation, but artistic vision gives the image its soul. As your confidence grows, your camera becomes less of a machine and more of an extension of your creative eye. You stop thinking about buttons and menus and begin thinking about emotion, balance, light, and storytelling. That is the true goal of mastering camera settings, not to impress others with technical knowledge, but to free yourself from technical distractions so you can focus entirely on creating art. When the camera disappears from your thoughts, your creativity is finally free to take its place.